Greetings, everyone. My name is Donna Lozito. I am a professional animal communicator and a classical homeopath, and I am here today with Barbara Shor, who is a veterinarian and also an animal communicator. And we were talking a little bit before we pressed record, and we were discussing what we might want to be talking about today. And what came up for me was the subject of consciousness, the importance of spiritual work on the soul's journey, and also with reference to the veterinary practice that is possibly looking towards a more holistic approach. And maybe, we can talk a little bit about, Barbara, how you journeyed from veterinary medicine to animal communication to your spiritual journey to really understanding the level of consciousness that animals possess.
Whoa, that's a lot. So I am a veterinarian and I practiced for a while. I also spent time in Africa working with wildlife, which was wonderful. But I realized after a while that it wasn't my deepest calling. That I adore animals, all animals, and I wanted to help them and to work with them, but I just didn't feel comfortable in the setting of being a veterinarian and focusing on health and disease. And what I felt, I didn't have anything to base this on other than my own gut feeling, was that we treat these diseases with whatever. And actually, my sense is that a lot of times we're putting band-aids on a deep wound. And where that deep wound might start is in the emotional field and the spiritual field. And and then it later manifests in the denser body. So if we can get to the core of it, which was what I was interested in, get to the core of what's really going on, then some deeper healing can take place. And what I discovered was that how important it was for me to be on this path of my own personal growth and looking at my own emotional issues, anything that was holding me back from being um, my best self, my most authentic self, and working with animals in that way, because I discovered if I'm with animals and I'm not doing my own inner work and releasing some of these beliefs and patterns that are not serving anymore, these negative patterns, I can project that onto the animals that I work with. And that's the last thing I want to do. So I want to be as clear as I can. I'll never be 100%. We're human after all, but I just don't want to project all that stuff onto the animals. And as I went along, after I left veterinary practice, I started looking into holistic medicine. And from there, I just found animal communication and kind of knew that was my path. So that was kind of my introduction to animal communication, and it was not easy. I've been doing this more than 30 years, and as you know, Donna, it's not that a lot of people think, "Oh, this is great that animals can talk." There's a lot of pushback. It's getting much, much, much better now, especially in the last few years. I think people are opening up more and more and more. But when I started, it was pretty tough. And people who were in science and medicine and academia, they thought it was all crazy, wacko stuff. So I ended up getting pretty quiet about it for a long, long time. And I remember when I started working with people and their animals, I said, I'm a veterinarian who focuses on emotional issues. that's what I said initially. I couldn't even say what I was really doing. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Do you find, Barbara, that when you speak to people that it's easier for you to bring up the possibility of animals communicating, and how do you actually go about that with a person who's a true non-believer or even a veterinarian who is really not sure that it's even possible?
I think I've gotten braver over the years and I don't care as much what people think. And I'll just say, sometimes I won't even bring it up, Donna. Sometimes I'll just it doesn't come up. People like to talk about themselves, so I let them go on and talk about themselves. But um, I'll just say, that I am an animal communicator, and this is what I do, and I've written books, and that's how I started. And people are pretty clear about whether they're interested or not. Haven't you found that I'll tell somebody this is what I do? Oh, that's nice. And then they go on to whatever. Or they'll say, wow, that's really cool. Tell me more about that. And then there's an opening. So that's how I deal with it.
And in your practice, what are you actually practicing in as of late? When you say that you've got this interest with the wild animals, how is that relating to your day to day and in your spiritual journey? I mean, where is that? Where are you with that at this point?
I'm kind of in a in between space with all that, but I just recently stopped doing private sessions with people with their pets, if you want to call them that, their beloved animals. I just stopped. It didn't feel like my calling anymore. And what my real passion is, I guess, is I've done a lot of deep diving into my spiritual journey, and I communicate with my own guidance, and I communicate with different animals. And like I said, I've written two books about elephants and whales. And rather than talking with one animal, which I do sometimes about mundane physical things, what I love and what I seem to be best at is going at the soul level, talking to them at the soul level. And what I found is these animals are so wise and so compassionate and so connected with the divine that for me, that's just inspirational. And their consciousness is high for most of them, all of them. Different, they're different levels, they're different personalities, but they're all conscious beings. And my sense, and what I've been told by the animals, is that we're all part of one consciousness. We're different aspects, we're different forms as we incarnate, but we're all part of one consciousness. And so this sounds kind of trite nowadays. We are all one, but I really believe it's true. And I also believe there's no hierarchy of souls. I've been told that many times by the animals, and I believe it's true that we're all part of this one consciousness, and when we get to that deeper level, the deep spiritual level, which takes time and it's not easy to go there, it's a process, but when we can get to that deeper level, the same as we can connect with an animal, we can connect with our own personal soul, our own guides and angels, um, the plants, other human beings at a soul level. It's all an open field because it's all one thing. So that's kind of where I am right now, is just exploring.
And how is it that in the day-to-day practices, I mean, you talk about us being all one, but even in the daily practice of communicating with animals that are domesticated, that level of consciousness does still prevail. So we can't exclude that they are not part of that conscious journey. they're just part of that conscious journey in a different context than in Africa.
Yeah,
But it's the same journey that they might be on with their person. It's as deep. And possibly in the daily, maybe the animal's task is to bring the person forward and along in the way that the wild animals brought you along. So I think that in the matter of communicating with animals, that that it varies as much as every soul journey varies.
yeah, no, I agree. And it's really beautiful the connection that our dogs or cats or horses or birds have with us, because they they are for me, they're teachers, you know. But they're also, I think about this sometimes, how dependent they are on us. We provide everything for them, their food, their shelter, their nurturing, their exercise, everything. They're so dependent on us. And I think it's an enormous responsibility that we take on when we have an animal, or we should take it on. And in return, they give us so much. I mean, the love and the joy and the lessons they teach us. It's just such a beautiful thing that we have with the animals. And I think it's a real blessing when we can actually appreciate that and and acknowledge acknowledge that whole thing.
And I think that is the task at hand for humanity, is to move to that place to really understand and realize the truth about every plant, animal, or person on the planet, and that there is no hierarchy and that there is not this aspect of superiority over the animals because they don't have language, which, historically has, I mean, a long time, humanity has been under that impression and or condition that somehow the animals are less.
Yeah, yeah. That
And
we're here to dominate them. You
yeah,
know, that's crazy. But if you look at the indigenous cultures all over the world, their connection with nature is just like the Native Americans that I know of. They think of the animals and the plants as their relatives. I mean, they really do. And
they
they're,
really do. But when you think about humanity, that humanity also wanted to dominate the Native Americans.
oh, I know.
So it's really, I think that there's a lot written about where that originated, and maybe in our next conversation we can talk about that system that is in place, that most humans are in that conditioning space of we are better. I mean, and I think it's changing, like you say, but it's still quite prevalent
Yeah.
that the animals don't have an understanding, or they don't, it's like we live in two different universes, they and theirs and us and ours. And therein lies the error, I believe, whereby we are all one, as you say, and on the planet as one. And that's where I think humanity's going. I'm not sure we're going to get to see that in our time, but it is certainly moving quickly in that direction.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of energy coming through now. I think we've got a lot of support from unseen beings, and there's really a push to evolve. And I think what's happening, because it's such hard times right now for so many of us, I think my perception of what's happening is all this positive energy is coming in, and there are more and more and more people that are waking up to it and realizing that we're not separated from one another or from nature. Um, but then there are the people that are entrenched in the old ways, deeply entrenched. And they're kind of fighting for their lives and making it miserable for everybody at this point. So something's got to give at some point. And my belief and my prayer and my hope is that love prevails, because that's what it's all about, is love for one another, love for ourselves, love for spirit, all of that. And if human beings could all come to the point where they live from that place of love and compassion, I mean, what a different world it would be.
Yeah, that's process.
Hmm. Hmm.
That
And
is
I feel a little sorry for people that are going through vet school or just coming up working with animals, because it's not easy these days, you know. There's a lot more technology to deal with. There's just so many factors, including mainstream consciousness, like we've talked about, that like in vet school, you know, animals are these little bodies and we take care of them, and that's how it is. Rather than these are these conscious souls, you know, that we need to honor and respect. At least mostly that's how it's taught. And so it's not easy. It's not easy to go along that path, especially if you're empathic and sensitive and you're feeling what the animals are feeling when they're in your care. It makes it challenging. And there's such a gift in it. When you can really, really resonate at that level with the animals in your care, um, it's beautiful, you know, but it's not easy. It's just not easy. And I will say too that the spiritual path isn't easy. You know, there's ups and downs and all around, because you need to process some of the things that hold you back from this love and compassion that we're talking about. So I think that if people can really, really listen to their heart and feel that love that they feel, that's why they got into this business in the first place. If you can really go with that, feel that, and move from that place, I think that's what's required of us now, and that will serve the planet in the highest way. Feel like I'm preaching. I don't want to be preaching.
because it really comes down to, it's like to say that if people could just, they probably would. But, it depends, I think, on the level of, where is the journey? Where are you on your journey? I think is the most important question. You know,
Uh-huh.
if we're going to talk about veterinarians, I mean, the question would be, and I'm not a veterinarian, so I came in on the energetic, with all of the energetics of homeopathy and animal communication. So I didn't have to face the system in
Mhm.
that way. I mean, I certainly had to deal with the non-believers, and I still to this day deal with non-believers, but it's not the entire systematic government that I have to really work with. I do work on a one-on-one with folks, and where are they on their individual soul's journey? So I would think that would be the question to ask yourself wherever you are in your life. What and how did I get here, and where do I want to go? And who am I really? It's an interesting question. There's a homeopath that I studied with. And when we take a homeopathic case, what we ask, we're trying to find out who the being is. And it's like one of the questions that he taught us to ask is, who are you?
Mhm. Mhm.
We ask someone that question, and it's interesting. Many people don't know many people are identified with their work. Many people are, who are you really? And I think that is the question, for those who are seeking to become communicators or seeking to really manage the veterinary profession better, or seeking to actually understand and how they can evolve further. Who am I?
Who am I? And that's not an easy question.
That's
And
right.
it can change, because I've been through a lot of different paths, or a lot of different iterations of this path. along the way. I was a dog trainer. Then I was an ethologist studying wolves and coyotes. And then I was ethologist in the field. And then I was a veterinarian. And now I'm an animal communicator. And now who knows what I am. But, it can change over time and it's not always easy to find.
But amidst all of that, who are you? Is the question. And so that's, I think we should close with that thought of who actually are you? I've had people say, well, I'm a doctor or I'm a veterinarian. And no, that's not really the question. I'm looking for who you are at the core level. And that's kind of interesting when you think about it.
But it can be a question of a lifetime, Donna. It's not like who are you and I just know automatically who I am and what I want and where I'm going. It's a question to ponder for a lifetime.
Forever. That's right. And yeah, I agree with you that it does change.
And
But
maybe another question to ask is what do I really want?
right. That would
And
follow.
what is my own heart and my soul asking of me right now? You
And that
know?
would be a great place to begin, to answer those questions for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're not easy questions to answer.
No, they're not easy questions to answer, but they can lead you in amazing directions.
Correct.
You can really, really, really listen to the answers. Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, Barbara. It was really very insightful, and I think that your story is powerful, and that many can benefit from the places that you have been, and certainly places you will be going.
I sure hope so, Donna. I would love to see people love their lives, and bless the animals every day and just live from your heart and soul.
Very good. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, Donna.